Hey, Legal Eagles, we have a special treat for you today. We have attorney Michael McPheeters here in the studio with us, and he's on the spot. All right, we got a question out here. What are your thoughts on vulnerability? And do you find it difficult to open up to others?
I think vulnerability is mandatory in order to be the best version of yourself. You need to be able to open up and be vulnerable to somebody. I have a lot of good friends in my life that I, am allow myself those moments to be vulnerable, believe it or not. But I do. I believe that it's mandatory to let people know, not necessarily everyone, but let people know how you're feeling, how you're processing, how things make you feel. People deserve to be validated in their feelings, and being vulnerable allows that.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. So, just continuing with the theme of vulnerability, I'm reading a great book now by Brene Brown. It's called Dare to Lead. And in it, she talks about vulnerability being absolutely imperative to being a great leader. So, how have you found that to positively impact you in your career space?
Oh, wow. I definitely, part of my job is empathy, right? I mean, certainly I represent people who've found themselves in very difficult situations, and certainly as a result of that, connection is vitally important. And I think being vulnerable and showing that, listen, the world's not perfect for me either, allows for that connection. It contributes to the empathy that establishes and strengthens a relationship between an attorney and a client.
How do you navigate that very complicated space of working with people who are going through a personal crisis and the legal system, which feels very black and white at times, but personal crisis is all sorts of gray?
Well, I believe that the legal system is all sorts of gray. I
Talk about
think,
that.
oh, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna, if you're charged with a crime, it's gonna be decided by a judge or a jury. Okay. Certainly, the context, the full story, all of these things are going to be going to be considered. Excuse me. At the end of the day, so certainly weaving together all of the facts and circumstances and the backstory and the connections when it comes to weaknesses, vulnerabilities, histories that may have contributed to a person's conduct or even their perspective on things. All of that is a part of this process. A lot of people don't recognize that, but I think that's the reason why I'm as effective as I am, is because I weave all of these things together to make the most persuasive presentation that I can possibly make on behalf of my client.
Okay. I love that you are a storyteller in a sense.
Absolutely.
You're creating something that is digestible for the judge and the jury to best understand what's going on from your client's perspective.
Absolutely.
How did you develop those skills?
And that's a good question. I think life, honestly, I think that I have been the recipient of much grace in my day. And so, because of that, I certainly recognize, and again, this is going to vulnerability, certainly recognizing where I've fallen short, where I've come up short, that allows me to have, stronger empathy, and seek grace on behalf of my clients, because certainly we all have different perspectives, we have different stories, past histories, but at the end of the day, I think that we all are moving in uh, the same direction, if you will.
Right.
And sometimes we can take some detours, and there might be some setbacks, but ultimately, we're all moving in the same direction. I think we're all, fighting to live, to be the best version of ourselves. And sometimes we fall short. And that common human story is definitely something that's relatable to a judge or jury or anybody else who gets an opportunity to make decisions.
How did you get into this profession? What was the inspiration?
I guess people say I'm persuasive.
Mm-hmm.
But what made me decide to be a lawyer was that I felt like that most societal changes have been perpetuated through the legal profession.
Mm.
I kind of wanted to be a social engineer, if you would. Like I wanted to be able to, have a seat at the table of influence to affect my community, to be in a position to help create a better quality of life for my family and for those around me. And I felt like that this profession was the best vehicle for that.
Talk about some of the ways you've been able to utilize that vehicle since you started this journey.
I'm not a politician and I have no desire to be, but I definitely think that I may not have gotten to the point yet where, I'm setting policy, right? But I do think that I have contributed to maybe changing the trajectory of some people's lives who then may go out and change the trajectory of other people's lives. So I definitely may not be at the macro level quite yet, but I think with my experiences at the micro level, then hopefully that will have had impact on the world at large.
Absolutely. I would say so. I think we sometimes minimize the impact we can have on a one-to-one basis
Right.
because we're looking at things globally and it feels like we have such large and looming challenges to address.
Absolutely.
And we'll miss that there are individuals who need our support in the moment,
Absolutely.
who will then be able to support someone else. Or, like there's a ripple effect to
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Speaking of ripple, I know you have been expanding. So you started off with one office, but then have grown into several. Talk about what that experience has been like.
Well, I mean, I just have meeting spaces in other cities. I'm a humble person. I don't like to exaggerate. We
Well, we go horn too, just a little bit.
I mean,
Like,
but I mean,
yeah.
yes, we do have a satellite office in Roanoke, and yes, we do have a satellite office in Danville, where we go and we meet with clients. Actually, the office in Danville now is actually ran by our mitigation specialist, Ms. Cunningham. So there is someone in that office Monday through Fridays. So I guess technically we do have two running offices now, but in the past, they were just places where I would meet people. But yes, we do have a presence in Danville and Roanoke, in addition to here in Martinsville.
Mm-hmm. How important has it been to create those opportunities to connect to other communities?
Very important. I've been in private practice since 2011, and I think Danville was, I'm from Chatham,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, being in Danville is like being at home. And of course, I serve Pittsylvania County as well. So it's very important to be home and, serving communities that are underserved with, strong, passionate advocates. So certainly wherever I can help people, I will.
What was the transition like going from being a part of the public defender's world into private practice?
So that's a good question. My first job out of law school, I was a prosecutor at the Richmond Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. Just didn't fit. Certainly prosecutors have an amazing responsibility to help keep the community safe. I applaud them for their responsibilities, but it just didn't fit for me. So I came to the public defender's office immediately. I loved being an advocate for the individual, like, having a client that I'm responsible for helping improve their lives and their situations. So that's where I really kind of got my groove. And I thought that I would be a public defender maybe for 10 years or something. But because of the success that I was having with people really appreciating the services that I was providing and the work that I was doing for them, I had the confidence to go out into private practice a lot sooner than I had anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had no regrets since then.
So give us some pro tips, if you will. We never hope to be in a situation where we'd have to call you.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could have some pro tips, if we run into
Mm-hmm.
some challenges, where your services might be needed, what should we be thinking about before we pick up the phone to call you? Are there strategies once the challenge situation arises that we should be thinking about?
Well, let me just say that, in addition to criminal defense, we also help out with, child custody. Daniel Rulo, who's now in the office, he's also helping out with, doing divorces and some civil stuff, landlord tenant. So pretty much you can come to McPheeters Law for pretty much any of your issues. But once a situation happens, and I'm not trying to be preachy or offer religious perspectives, but I am offering somewhat of a spiritual perspective that,
Okay.
Once something has happened, kind of surrender it. Don't be so stressed out and try to undo what can't be undone. Just kind of recognize that, this has happened. I want to move forward. I want, things to work out in this situation, but there's only so much that I can do. Accept that. Surrender that. And for those people who do that, I have been a witness to multiple miracles in cases that I just thought that, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do for this client, but I've seen it time and time again. When you just like, it is what it is. Certainly I'm going to hold my attorney accountable for making sure that he represents me to the best of his ability. But, I'm not going to be saddled with anxiety and regret. I'm going to surrender it.
Right. That is an amazing pro tip, because I see all the time on shows where people are in some type of criminal situation and they try to cover this up and cover that up.
Right.
And it seems to be a pile-on that creates more of a challenge. And so in that surrendering, there's an opportunity to kind of navigate one issue as opposed to 10.
Absolutely. And people have a tendency to mess things up, when
Right.
when they are, just, you probably wouldn't have been in that situation if you had it all figured out, right? So peace is priceless, and trying to get there, I think, will serve quite well.
When identifying appropriate counsel, let's just say you're booked and busy and you're not able to support this person in their challenge situation, what advice would you give for finding someone else who could be adequate counsel?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in evaluating an attorney, I think you need to find someone who is going to fight for you, someone who, is listening to you, listening to your perspective, is honest with you. Anybody that knows me knows that I don't oversell. I am a straight shooter. I honestly would rather a client be pleased with me than have any type of disappointment, or surprisingly pleased with me than to have any type of disappointment. Part of the hustle in this profession sometimes is for attorneys that say, oh, I got this. You don't have to worry about this. You're going to get acquitted. Like making promises that they certainly are in no position to make. So I would be cautious of that, but really just listening or taking an inventory of someone who appears to be passionate, concerned, empathetic, and is honest with you and is a straight shooter. I think you can't go wrong if you check all those boxes.
In addition to the work you do supporting people with their legal challenges and other types of legal work that you provide through your various offices, you're also an engaged member of the community. Talk to us about some of the community activities that you're involved in.
See, now I feel bad because I think I could be more engaged. There's a lot of opportunities out there for community engagement. I am active with my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity.
There you go.
Yeah. And I try to help out, people when there are circumstances and situations. If it's, raising money for a cause, I try to be as generous as I can be when it comes to those type of pursuits. But I do feel like there's a little bit more that perhaps I need to be doing in the community, what is extremely important. I think that goes along with the whole social engineering part. I mean, certainly being an attorney in the courtroom is part of that, but also being influential in the community and positively affecting people's lives and circumstances is important. And for whatever reason, people really seem to look up to attorneys. So that has definitely been a vehicle for me to be able to have some influence in the community.
Well, certainly, we appreciate you. This is not why you're a guest on the show, but your support of Hometown Hustle season 1 and 2 made such a huge impact on our ability to create this content and to give voice to a community and communities across Southside who otherwise wouldn't have this vehicle to talk about, the great things going on, to showcase the entrepreneurial spirit that lives here. So that's quite meaningful for us, and we appreciate you.
And we appreciate you because this is great. I mean, I thank you for this.
Yeah. What's next for you? What's the next big project? The next expansion? What are you getting into?
I think that all members of the African diaspora need to go home to West Africa. I have been to Ghana, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire. I feel like there's another country I'm missing. But in any event, West Africa is a very beautiful place. It's a place that it feels like home. The culture, the people, the food, it's just an amazing, amazing experience that I think that we should all work to have, because I think that it will certainly be an experience that will be extremely rewarding and life-changing.
Definitely on my list.
Okay.
I have a friend who was in the Africana Studies program at Cornell with me. She was actually a year after, my class, and she moved to Ghana. And we're connected on social media, and I'm like, I have to visit Erin. It just looks like an amazing experience where
Absolutely.
she's been able to plug in to, our ancestry, as well as to tap into a different cultural experience that
Absolutely.
has felt super healthy. And looking from the outside, it looks like she has a very balanced, healthy life as a result of that move.
And you're going to see a lot of similarities culturally, right? Like you're going to just be like, wow, like this is they're an ocean away, but yet it's the same rhythm, it's the same beat. It's really truly a very rewarding experience.
So you do a lot of traveling, though. I know that's your thing when you're
Yeah.
not supporting people through the legal system. Just throw out some other places you've been to. You've already named like 4 or 5, but what are some other places?
Actually, I have not been to as many places as I would have liked to have been to at this point, because I keep going to some places over and over and over again.
Right. Well, what are your repeat favorites?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be in Ghana again really soon.
Okay.
And that will be the third time this year. But
I'm loving it.
but again, there's a purpose with that. But I still haven't been to Europe yet, but I have been to places in South America. I mean, most of my extensive travel has been in Africa.
Okay. All right. In connecting with your younger self, before you knew who you would become, what advice would you have given younger Michael?
Just constantly strive to be the best version of yourself. Yeah. Be the best version of yourself. I'll be honest. There's, I cut corners in the past. I definitely did. To be perfectly, this is my vulnerability moment. I was smart. I was naturally smart. I naturally had, gifts that, sometimes I wouldn't work as hard as I could have. And so I would certainly encourage me to do more of that.
When thinking about young people now and your interactions with them, with the social media climate and all of the contemporary challenges that they're facing, what advice would you share with this generation of young people?
The only person that you're in a race with is yourself. Do not compare yourself to anyone else. Don't compete with anyone else. Don't look at anyone else's life as an example of what yours should be or shouldn't be. It's all about you versus you. That is absolutely advice that I think that this generation particularly needs to hear, because with social media and with
Oh,
all the
yes.
things that you're seeing on social media, I can only imagine what the self-esteem levels are like for kids these days, right?
Right.
I mean, it's just absolutely crazy how people will get on social media and put forth these fraudulent depictions of themselves, and I could just only imagine how that could negatively impact people's self-esteem. But if you stay focused on running the race in which it's you versus you, then you can block out all that noise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for running this race with us. Thank you for being such an amazing support to the community, not only through your professional work inside and outside the courtroom, but how you bless people with your spirit and your energy. And we thank you for being on the spot.
Thank you.